episode of Africa Today, where we get you the latest news and events taking place on the African scene. And we will start off with our major top stories and reports. And starting off, we will be talking about the African Free Trade Agreement. And let's check out this report first on the kickoff and the start of intra-African trade through the African Free Trade Agreement. Let's have a closer look.
A handful of African companies have finally started shipping goods under the long-delayed African Continental Free Trade Area AFCFTA Free Trade Agreement. They are part of a new initiative to kickstart the inter-African trade. It has been a long time coming. However, several African nations have started trading a trickle of goods under the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Kenya has shipped locally made vehicles and truck batteries, as well as a consignment of Kenyan-grown tea to Ghana in the past months. Rwanda has also exported processed coffee beans to the West African nation. The initiative gives companies dealing in certain products in selected countries support through the African Continental Free Trade Area process. The idea is to test and prove that the AFCFTA system works and get intra-regional trade finally rolling under the agreement. As well as Kenya, Rwanda, and Ghana, it includes Cameroon, Egypt, Mauritius, Tanzania, and Tunisia. The world's largest free trade area became operational with much fanfare on January 1st, 2021. However, the implementation of the single continental market has been delayed for several reasons, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the lack of agreement on the rules of origin for some product lines and the failure of 10 out of the 54 signatories to ratify it.
Welcome back, and moving on to health. After a long, steady decline of cholera, it has made a devastating comeback. More than 1.1 billion people are at risk. Let's have a look at this report.
Cholera does not know borders. Despite being preventable and easily treatable, children continue to suffer from the potentially fatal disease. After years of steady decline, cholera has made a devastating comeback. More than 1.1 billion people are at risk. The intestinal infection often spreads because of a lack of clean water and sanitation facilities. Children living in volatile and unstable communities are notably at risk. Thankfully, vaccines and treatments are available. UNICEF is working to make sure that these provisions reach the children that need them the most. The goal is to make sure that by 2030, cholera is no longer a threat to public health. Here's what you need to know about cholera and the efforts to eradicate the disease. Cholera is an intestinal infection. It is caused by food or water that is contaminated with the bacterium Vibrio cholerae. Researchers estimate that every year there are as many as 4 million cholera cases globally and as many as 143,000 deaths. Young children, especially those under the age of 5, bear the brunt of the disease. Furthermore, malnutrition children are more vulnerable to experiencing severe symptoms. Cholera is a preventable and easily treatable disease.
Welcome back, and moving on to the Democratic Republic of Congo. At least 10 people have died in a new landslide in the DRC. Let's have a look at this report.
At least 10 people have died in a new landslide that occurred after heavy rain in a landlocked area in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Officials said they died from erosion caused by heavy rain in Miringati village, Labero territory, North Kivu province. The eastern region of the DRC has been shaken in recent days by natural disasters. In the territory of Masisi, still in North Kivu, one person was killed and 3 others injured in Rubaya in the landslide that occurred on Monday in this mining site. In the neighboring province of South Kivu, deadly floods last week after heavy rains left at least 401 dead, hundreds missing, and significant material damage.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and to talk more about the African Free Trade Agreement, we're delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Mustafa Tamam, economic expert. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Well, sir, a handful of African companies have finally started shopping goods under the African Free Trade Agreement, which kickstart African trade, intra-African trade. How do you see the significance of this agreement in facilitating trade between African states?
This is a very important agreement, actually, and certainly it will boost and upgrade the trade between African countries. Certainly, there should be a mechanism in order to follow up the implementation of these recommendations. See, because certainly in any probably new agreement, you will find obstacles which probably might encounter the implementation of certain aspects. So certainly there should be a committee in order to eliminate or probably to solve any obstacles that might encounter the implementation of this agreement.
Right. Well, sir, how do you view Egypt's keenness on the implementation of the African Free Trade Agreement and working on its success?
Certainly, Egypt is giving a lot of trust and importance to the African continent, and this was envisaged by a lot of efforts made by the government and the president in order to boost and to enhance cooperation between African countries, and also between African countries and Egypt. So certainly, this is a very, very important initiative.
Right. Well, sir, the World Bank estimated the total revenues that the continent is expected to gain from applying the agreement to reach $450 billion, while African exports are expected to grow to $550 billion annually. How do you read this, sir?
Well, this is quite important, actually. But the point is that in the exports that African countries will execute, it will be very important to adhere to quality products, because certainly in exporting certain products, it's very important to enhance and put stress on quality, because certainly certain countries like the European and probably the United States will stress on the quality, so it's very important to have a quality control in order to ensure that these products will be sustainable, and it's not only one time that they'll be exported, that will be a long-term strategy for exportation.
Well, sir, do you think that African countries would lower both their exports and imports to European and Asian countries and work more on the African-made products?
Probably, yes. Certainly, there be concentration on African countries, because certainly these have a lot of potential and there are a lot of chances in order to enhance cooperation between these countries, and certainly this will have a positive impact on the African economy as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Right. Dr. Mustafa, do you think that Africa is a promising market for the Egyptian products?
Definitely, yes. Because certainly Egypt produces a lot of important products, and there's a demand for these products, and also for services provided by certain companies, like the contracting companies, which have a lot of business now in Africa. Mm-hmm. So certainly this will be very, very important.
Yeah, well, how far do you think that the Egyptian market is a window to Europe to access the African market?
Definitely, that's true, because it's not only for Europe, but also for the Far East. Egypt is in a strategic location, in the middle of the Far East countries and the Arab countries, you see the Gulf countries, and European and United States. So certainly it maintains a strategic location.
Sir, the trade and industry sector is one of the supporting sectors for the African economy and intra-African trade. How far do you think the African Free Trade Agreement would help in supporting the African economy in the future?
Certainly, this agreement will elevate the countries, you see, the African countries. But certainly, as we mentioned just now, it will be very important to eliminate any obstacles that might encounter this agreement. This is very, very important.
Right. Sir, what are the main challenges, in your opinion, facing the implementation of the African Free Trade Agreement between the African states?
Probably governmental and bureaucracy regulations, probably non-experience in certain areas for human resources that you see there, and the lack of technology, which is not very much there in African countries. They lack technology. So certainly these will be the main obstacles probably which will be encountering these countries.
What are the main challenges that we should start working on in priority in order to facilitate intra-African trade among the different African states?
So the first thing certainly will be giving facilities and eliminating bureaucracy, and probably the government. Some countries have complicated governmental procedures, and certainly this will be a drawback for implementing this agreement. So certainly this will be the first priority.
Sir, how do you assess the current status of the African economy, and especially after the COVID-19 and the post-pandemic era? How far is the African economy getting back on track, actually?
Actually, within the coming period, I think the African economy will be developing, and certainly there are serious attempts, you see, between the African countries in order to implement this agreement and upgrade their economy. This is this has been rather seen in the past.
The African continent, sir, is full of its natural resources. When we will see African-made products exceeding the exported products to all African states?
This is true. You see, when we have a strategy for utilizing and exploiting the resources that are there, you see, there should be a strategy, and probably encouraging investors to come in order to invest in these countries, you see, in order to have a chance to export these countries.
In your opinion, what are the main factors hindering the exploitation of the natural resources in the African continent?
Probably lack of technology. This is the first drawback, and certainly this could be eliminated by having cooperation between certain countries which have the technology, specifically in the agricultural sector and in the petroleum, oil and gas sector.
Right. How far do you think Egypt can transfer technology to the African continent to help in proceeding with depending more on African products and utilizing all its resources, natural resources, I mean?
Definitely Egypt has a lot of experience in a lot of domains, in the agricultural domain and in the industrial domain, and certainly by probably having a cooperation between Egypt and these countries, this will be a very important factor. Also in the contracting business, Egypt has a lot of experience, see, in the contracting business, and certainly this will be very important in order to elevate the infrastructure of these countries, because probably in certain African countries the infrastructure is not adequate, and we have a lot of experience in this respect, certainly, and we could cooperate.
Right. Well, I would like to thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa Tammam, economic expert. Many thanks for your insights, sir. Dear viewers, that brings us to the end of this edition of Africa Today. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more coming up here on Nile TV International. you.